This is Blackstone Joe, and you're listening to Slick Talk.
If I say I'm an oil man, you will agree.
There's the stink of oil about him.
Hello and welcome to episode 145 of Slick Talk. I'm your host, Blackstone Joe, and I'm glad you're here. Today's episode is called Fill in the Blank, and it goes something like this. I was sitting at my desk looking through my emails, and I saw that a customer sent along some historical data that belonged to their aircraft. Now, the first sample that we analyzed for them was indeed the first sample that we saw from this engine. But the customer had some old data from another lab. Not every lab is alike. We run different tests and we include different results. And, of course, the way we address those results can vary quite a bit depending on who you're going to with your samples. In this particular instance, the lab in question did not include all the elements we test for, nor did they analyze the physical properties. Therefore, Blackstone certainly offers a more comprehensive approach, but I want to talk about what it means to fill in the blank, why this old data matters, so that if you are a listener out there who has some existing data from a lab not named Blackstone, you'll know to send it in, because at the end of the day, it helps us help you. And, spoiler alert, it's at no additional cost to you. So back to the top of the story, where I looked at the first sample from an engine, looked pretty good, but it was all the better to have this customer's historical data added in. Now, we can't verify another lab's data, but the wear metals, what range they were in compared to our averages, at least gave us a starting point that wasn't merely our averages for comparison. We were able to see, in general, what the wear profile looked when that other lab was taking a look-see at this particular customer's engine oil. And we can, of course, compare how our data matches up. And fortunately, there was a fair amount of consistency, at least in terms of the testing and the results that we have in common with this other lab. The good news for the customer is our results went a step further. We include lead blow-by, for example, whereas this other lab did not. Now, depending on the aircraft you're sampling, lead blow-by can really tell us quite a bit. If you're running leaded fuel, for example, you're missing out on a clear overview of bearing wear. If you are using leaded fuel, it's still good to see the lead content. Lead can be high or low depending on hours on the oil. As such, it can also be a helpful indicator of mechanical trouble. It can go along with valve guide issues. It can go along with cylinder area problems. So keeping track of lead blow-by and how much there is in the used oil is a helpful characteristic in addition to the wear profile, the metals that are actually coming from wearing parts. So knowing where lead is definitely helps aid in gathering an overview of how your engine is doing, something that we added in to this customer's report, whereas they did not have that analysis previously. And we also include several other elements which aren't important if you're doing everything right, but they can play a big role if you're running the wrong stuff. So here I'll get technical for a minute, even more so than you might imagine in a podcast about used oil analysis, but hang with me here. There are some elements that motor oil uses that aircraft approved oils, aka ashless dispersant oils, do not. Now, ideally, you're running the oil you should be, and if you are, we won't see evidence of non-AD oil in use. The problem with non-AD oil in aircraft is it can leave deposits behind, which, if left to accumulate, can result in detonation. And as you can imagine, when you're up in the air, detonation is not really a word you want to think about ever. As such, running the right oil matters. Now, some people do their own service on aircraft and some people do not. If you're working with a mechanic that you are unfamiliar with, or let's say you are doing a pre-buy inspection, you want to see what that previous owner has been doing, checking to see if there is any sign of non-AD oil is a worthwhile measure. If everything's going right, you're running your W100, your 1550, we won't see evidence of it in the elements we test for. But if we do, we'll be sure to let you know. When an engine is on the road, it's typically less important to instruct an owner to stop doing what they like to do. Some folks will be very non-traditional when it comes to their maintenance approach. One instance I tend to recall is an owner running an entire sump full of Marvel Mystery Oil to clean the engine. Now, that's a questionable measure in a lot of respects, one of them being financial, of course, but I include that to say that when an engine is on the road, generally there's less concern, but when they're up in the air, we want to make sure you're doing everything right to ensure your safety. And ruling out use of non-AD oil is part of the approach we take in analysis, not to mention checking for any sign of harmful contamination. Water and fuel are two contaminants we'll identify during our physical testing of the oil. And going back to the previous lab this customer had used, the physical properties were nowhere on the page, not even a measurement of the viscosity to see if it read like a W100, a 1550, whatever it was supposed to be. While it's of course paramount to know what kind of metal the engine is making, when you see high levels, you want to know why they're high as well. So analyzing the physical properties and understanding if the oil was in good physical condition can lead you to another suspect when it comes to what's to blame for an engine wearing more than it should, more than it has previously, or more than averages show as typical, whatever the baseline for comparison is. So even if we don't have all of this data in common with other labs, we can at least help fill in the blank, build a trend sooner if you have some existing data just to get the ball rolling. But with the Blackstone approach, you'll have a more comprehensive overview of what's going on and whether or not you need to make any changes to the maintenance plan you're currently using. And I don't bring all this up merely as a selling point for Blackstone. Again, it helps us help you. When we're writing a report, we want to have as much information on our side so we can write a meaningful comment, one that is tailored to you, your understanding, and your engine's situation. And that is why when you send in existing data for whatever it is you're sampling, we'll add it in at no additional charge because we also want it in the file. It may not be the same data we can obtain. However, we'll draw whatever we can from it. And at the end of the day, when you keep your samples with Blackstone, you'll see the difference in terms of how we're able to fill in the blanks the way other labs simply don't. We have a different approach. That, of course, includes the comment, which will take into consideration where your existing data is from and the data that we're able to lend and what sort of insight the entire accumulation will give you and what it is you're taking care of. That brings today's show to a close. If you have any other questions about Blackstone or what sets our operation apart from the rest of the field, don't hesitate to reach out. We'd be glad to tell you more. This is Blackstone Joe, signing off.
The Slick Talk podcast is powered by Blackstone Laboratories. If you're ready to start your oil analysis journey, visit blackstone-labs.com to order your free test kit.